Alright, so those of you who have been following me on social media know I haven't been feeling well lately. When I'm feeling a bit better, I've sipped some green tea to fix my horrible voice. Let's talk about the Orville. Having just talked about Star Trek Discovery recently, it feels only appropriate that I talk about the Orville. This is a new Fox series that is being made in the tradition of Star Trek, to live up to Star Trek's legacy. Ever since I heard about this series, I've been really excited for it. Everything from the design of the ship to the tone that they claimed the show would be going for reminded me of the movie Galaxy Quest. An excellent comedy movie which parodies and satirizes Star Trek stories and tropes, while being a loving homage to Star Trek with a great Star Trek-esque action sequence and drama, rounding out the story. Many Star Trek fans count it among the great Star Trek movies. That's just how great this movie is. It's one of my all-time favorite science fiction movies, and for a long time I've been hoping for something in a similar vein. Even when I heard that the show was being spearheaded by the bane of my existence, Seth MacFarlane, I still held out hope that it would be good. While this did mean that it had the potential to be something like Family Guy mashed with Star Trek, an absolutely horrifying concept, I knew that Seth MacFarlane was a fan of Star Trek and that he would at least try to show it due respect. And so far, he has. Everything about this show, from the set designs to the ship designs, screams Star Trek The Next Generation. From what I understand, they even put some filters over the cameras to make them look more like cameras from that era of television. They use physical models, I think, enhanced with a little bit of CG for all of the ships rather than the CG models that are common in sci-fi series now. It feels like television lifted from another era, which is excellent for someone like me who is nostalgic for older Star Trek, but it does come with some disadvantages. The storytelling is very episodic, which I do like for a show like this, but I would like some more consistent plot threads running through all of the episodes. We are in an era of television where even episodic series need overarching plot points, and while there are a couple in this show, or at least a couple that are implied to be in this show, they seem to be fewer and further between than I would like. There's also the issue of the stories, which while they haven't been bad, do have some problems. The show is very much a comedy-drama hybrid. The tone is very much like Brooklyn Nine-Nine on the same network. And I do like that. It means that the comedy is interwoven into the series such that the characters are allowed to act like real people and still be competent at their jobs. Take Galaxy Quest, for example. In that, the cast plays actors who played the Galaxy Quest characters in the Galaxy Quest TV show until they are mistaken by aliens as the characters that they played, and roped into this Star Trek-esque heroic scenario. The characters on the Orville feel very much like those characters might be if they actually did live in the future and work on a spaceship. Not the characters that the actors played, but the actors themselves. The very real, realistic people that those actor characters were. While this show is nowhere near as funny as Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine is probably the best comedy on television right now. That tone does help these people to feel like real people without undermining their ability to do their jobs well. In fact, the Orville crew are pretty damn heroic people, problem-solving in very Star Trek-esque ways, to overcome situations that are frankly above their pay grade. But there are some issues with the comedy. It sometimes feels like the characters take one step back, pause, and then tell a joke, rather than the jokes being interwoven into the story properly. The pilot, I think, was the worst offender in this sense, but things have been getting better, so I do hold out hope that the comedy will continue to improve. There are still some moments where the comedy is just straight up cringy, like in the most recent episode, the inciting incident from that episode involving the ship navigator, John Lamar. If you guys have seen the episode, you'll know what I'm talking about. That wasn't funny to me, it was just cringy. But I also suspect that sometimes that's actually the point. They're trying to paint realistic characters, and sometimes realistic characters, their attempts to be funny, turn out cringy. And it does, to a point, help to endear the characters to you. While the stories of the show do continue in the Star Trek tradition, sometimes that is for the worst, and sometimes I don't think they do it quite well enough. There is an early episode dealing with one of the alien characters, Bortus, a Moclan, where we got to learn a little bit more about his people and how they are so male-centric that even when a rare female child is born, she is typically given a sex change operation as an infant to become physically male, and never actually told her actual genetic sex. It was trying to make a statement about gender equality, but it never really seemed to get where it was trying to go. That, and it just wasn't a very enjoyable episode to begin with. But the episode does end on a note which makes you suspect that they're going to be taking this somewhere else in a future episode, that this story has not yet concluded. So by the end, I was kind of left suspending judgment of the episode, at least for the time being. But then there was the most recent episode, which introduced a lot of really neat ideas. It was effectively a social satire and commentary, showing us this very human-like society that had taken social media so far that it became their legal system. In this world, majority opinion is treated as fact. So if the majority opinion of someone is that they should be prosecuted, they're prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which in the most extreme cases means being lobotomized. This felt very much like something you might have seen in the original series, just modernized. The scale of this was huge. You got a sense that this society was enormous. Whereas back in Star Trek, the original series, Kirk and his people might have dealt with a planet's population which doesn't seem to be much bigger than 12 or 13 people. The scenario was also a much more modern one, but it still didn't quite feel like it ever got to the point. I really liked how it ended with them saving one of their people from this legal system using essentially Facebook memes. I thought that was extremely clever. And maybe this is just because I used to watch the original series and I have seen Kirk and his people fix these societies by the end. I really did expect the Orville to fix this society by the end. Instead, they just kind of trust it to fix itself based upon their example. At the end of the day, the scenario felt more realistic because of that, but it still felt incomplete, like it didn't quite get where it was going. There's also the issue that the same kind of story has been done before. Not exactly the same, of course, but similar enough, and in some ways better. This is where the Orville trying to live up to the legacy of Star Trek runs into some problems. Back in the day, Star Trek would have been the one to do this story first. The same can be said about another episode, which was basically a literal rehash of an old Star Trek episode, For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. The title of the episode, If the Stars Should Appear, even feels like a title in the spirit of the title of that old episode. And it really was effectively the same plot, just the society that the ship encountered was a lot more advanced, felt a lot more realistic than the society in that old episode. And it's not like I have a problem with this series doing its own take on a Star Trek episode or an homage to a Star Trek episode. It's just that aside from the society being a more modern, realistic society, there wasn't really any kind of twist on the formula. It was a good episode, don't get me wrong. It was very well done, very well produced. It was clear that they really loved that old episode and were trying to do justice to this homage to it. But if this show were actually a Star Trek show, then it would be guilty of one of the same things that made Star Trek Enterprise pretty mediocre. The fact that it rehashed episode ideas. But then there have been really great episodes of the Orville too. The episode The Krill, for example, where we finally get to know something about the mysterious war-like enemy race that the good guy Union has been dealing with for quite a while now, and that the Orville itself has encountered a few times. This episode begins with a couple of Orville crew members infiltrating a Krill ship in Krill disguises, attempting to learn about the Krill religion, because the Krill military are all religious extremists. The goal is to use their religious text to find some common ground between the Krill and the Union species, since, like Star Trek's Federation, the Union is made up of many different alien species, so that they might begin the process of forging a real peace with these people, and they won't have to fight them anymore. But the episode ends with those two officers learning of a Krill plot to kill thousands of colonists on a Union planet, and having to take action which involves killing the entire Krill crew in order to save their own people. A mission of peace became a mission of war, and did a really good job of showing us these two characters, these two heroic characters, who slipped so easily into that role of warrior. The episode ended up being a really effective commentary on how easy it becomes to kill your enemy in war, and I really liked and appreciated that. I think that's commentary that our world really needs right now. I'm going to be perfectly upfront with you. I've been very critical of this show so far, but I really like it. The characters feel real, the stories are fun to watch, even if they are sometimes derivative. The Mocklin storyline and the Krill storyline both seem like things that are going to be continued in the future, and I look forward to seeing how that happens. This is one of the few shows that I look forward to watching every single week. Is it worthy of the legacy it is trying to continue, the legacy of Star Trek? That is still up in the air. But I will tell you that I do think this is a better Star Trek show than Star Trek Discovery has proven to be up to this point. This show, at the very least, shows us an optimistic future for humanity. Not to mention that the Orville features the character of Elara Katan, who, despite being about 1/3 my size, could break me in half with 2 fingers, which is just really badass. I guess you could say that I have a type, and she fits right into it. If you're a fan of old school Star Trek, you should at least give this show a watch. It has been a little rockier so far than I would have liked, but it has still been a really fun ride. And the fact that it has been improving pretty consistently does give me hope that it will continue to do so. The stories that it has been telling are still enjoyable enough that I look forward to watching them. But that's just my 2 cents on the subject. If you have seen the Orville, what do you guys think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.